Hi.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook, and today we are talking about the books that I read in August. I just want to give you a little spoiler alert. It is a whole lot of thrillers and a couple of DNFs, which is actually really sad because the couple of books that I DNF'd were actually two of my most highly anticipated reads for this entire year, but that just happens sometimes. We will definitely get into that towards the end, but yeah, I am really just on a kick with thrillers right now. I just love them, something about them. It feels like they're the only thing right now that can really keep my attention, draw me in. I just love how fast-paced they are. I love, you know, it feels like a little bit more of an active reading experience. I'm sitting there, I'm trying to figure it out, I'm trying to guess what's gonna happen, and it's just been a fun switch up, but it's really, really what I'm loving right now. So yeah, gonna be talking about a whole lot of those, but there is some dark romance. There are a few other things we will talk about, so yeah. Let's just get into it. So the first of several thrillers that I read this past month was Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. So this story follows a young woman who is actually a recovering drug addict. So the past year and a half or so, she's been a part of this sort of like rehab program where they help you recover, and after you've been sober for a certain amount of time, they basically help place you in jobs. So she is up for this job interview for this nanny position for this really wealthy family that just needs someone to basically babysit their kid, be a live-in nanny for the summer before the kid starts in kindergarten. So she wants this job so bad, she desperately needs it. It's perfect, it has a place for her to stay. So she goes to the interview and immediately hits it off with the wife, but her and the husband are not vibing as much. He's not thrilled about the idea of a drug addict being, you know, the babysitter for their child, but eventually she does win him over and she gets the job. And this job really seems like a dream situation at the beginning. The child is super sweet, you know, he draws these little pictures all day. He loves doing that. She gets, you know, this credit card, she gets to bring him and do things, and it's just like a really fun time. She has a place to live. But things start to get a little weird very quickly. These drawings that the kid draws, very innocent, you know, they start out with like little bunnies and like rainbows and outside views and things that they're doing and them playing together and whatever. But then they start to get a little bit strange, like things start to get added into them. And we actually learned that this kid has an imaginary friend that he calls Anya. And you think at first, you know, oh, he's just a kid, it's just an imaginary friend, it's no big deal. But then he starts kind of doing things that are out of character and doing things that are not so good. And he's saying, you know, Anya told me to do it. Anya's here. Anya's saying to do this. Anya wants me to tell you this. And it just gets progressively stranger and stranger. And then, you know, things start happening. The nanny starts hearing noises, and during quiet time, whenever he's locked himself in his room, it's like he's talking to someone, and she starts to get really freaked out. These drawings continue to get more and more sort of sinister, and basically she tries to bring it up to the parents that, you know, I think something might be going on here. Like, I know I sound crazy, but it's a complicated situation because the parents expressed from the very beginning in her job interview, she showed up wearing her little cross necklace because she is a Christian, and they are a family of atheists. They are very science-based and science beliefs, so they're not about any sort of suggestion that there's anything maybe paranormal happening within their house. They are not about to hear it. So the nanny is kind of on her own. And so from there, things just kind of like escalate and get crazier and crazier. You kind of learn that there's maybe some history to this house, and some tragic things may have happened here in the past that might be connected to this imaginary friend situation. It's really a mystery. There's lots of twists and turns to it, and it's really, really cool that you get to see the actual pictures throughout the story. Like, there were so many. I mean, I would verge on 100 pictures that had to be drawn for this book, which was just a really cool detail. But yeah, this book had a plot twist at the end that completely threw me. It was just so suspenseful up into the last, you know, sort of resolution of it all, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I always love a thriller that has a kid in it. Actually, I kind of hate it because it's the worst. It's just so creepy, something about a little kid, but this was very well done, and I was very happy to finally read it after it being on my TBR for entirely too long. Guys, I'm filming this at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, and there is somebody in my apartment building that is already blaring music as if they are pre-gaming to go out at 4:30 on Friday. So I'm sorry if you hear some like bass happening in the background. This is apartment living. I love it. But Anyways, the next book that I read was What Lies Between Us by John Mars. So the last month or so, I have seen this book all over Book Talk. I follow a lot of like thriller creators. I always see them pop up in my For You page, and I've seen this book talked about a lot, and I went into it pretty blind. I only knew like the most basic premise, and I have to say before I even get into it, this might be the best thriller I have read ever. Definitely in a very long time. The Housemaid by Freida McFadden for me still is my number one, but specifically when I talk about The Housemaid, I had never read a book in my life that made me feel so insane, like gaslit. The Housemaid had such a like claustrophobic sort of aspect to it where you just get so turned around and you're questioning what you've read previously, and it just was such an experience that I'd never really had before in a thriller, and this book kind of brought me back to that. It really gave me similar vibes of that, where at no point did you really know what was happening and who to trust and what the real story was here. So basically this story, it opens up and you're getting the perspective of this younger woman and then this sort of older woman, and you put two and two together by the end of the first chapter that they're actually a mother and a daughter, and the daughter is keeping the mother held captive. Like, they're living in this house together. The mother is chained up, like shackle around her ankle, chained up. She is kept in this room upstairs all day. The mother or the daughter lets her down to eat dinner and then puts her back upstairs, and like she is her prisoner. And so immediately you're like, what is going on here? There's clearly some major tension between the two of them. The mother seems to be very afraid of the daughter. The daughter, you're just like, what could possibly happen to make you chain up your elderly mother? So right away you have to assume like the daughter must be like crazy. What's going on here? But you very quickly realize there is so much more to this story than you could ever imagine. You see the present day from the mother and the daughter's perspective, but then you also jump back to the past all the way to when the daughter is a young child, and you see, you know, their lives from their perspectives back then too, and you slowly start to kind of like put the pieces together, going from the past all the way to the present. And literally at 5 different points in this book, I thought it was going one direction, or one thing was going to happen, or I was supposed to believe one thing or be on one person's side or think that this was the twist, but then there was another twist. And up until literally the last page of this book, like the epilogue, it just kept going. It just kept going. You never knew what the resolution was going to be, and I genuinely thought this book was perfect. The way that it ended, I was just like, oh my god. I actually felt insane at certain points. Like it was one of those books where like the characters in it kind of scare you because you're inside of their head, you know? It's like a first person perspective, so you're in this character's head, but you're like, oh yeah, they're actually insane. But because I'm in their head, you almost see how they like rationalize what they're thinking. It's just, it was nuts. It was a crazy experience. So if you liked The Housemaid and you've been looking for something sort of similar to that in vibes, absolutely read this book. Just regardless, if you're a thriller fan, I'm gonna recommend this one the highest of any of the books I'm gonna talk about in this video. But yeah, it was great. So next, speaking of Freida McFadden, I decided to go and read another one of her books. I think I've read nearly like 11 or 12 of her books at this point. I mean, she is just such a solid thriller author for me. She keeps her chapters so short and sweet. She's to the point. They just grip you from the beginning, and every chapter kind of ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and just the way she structures them, I can never put them down. I just have to fly through them. So I had seen a lot of people talking about The Teacher, and like I said, The Housemaid is my favorite of hers. It's kind of unfortunate because it was the first of her books that I read, and everyone that I've read since I've liked, but you know, none of them really compared to that one. And I can say with full certainty after reading The Teacher, this is definitely my second favorite of hers. Like The Housemaid was up here and all the other ones kind of were like started down here and went lower, but The Teacher is like about here. This book was so interesting. So it's told from two perspectives, or it's a little more complicated than that, but I can't like give things away. But essentially, for the most part, it's told from two perspectives. The first being the perspective of this teacher. Surprise, surprise. So she is actually a teacher at this high school, and she is married to a man who is also a teacher at this high school. They've been together for, you know, quite a while, and you can tell from the very beginning of this chapter that they're like, you know, a good couple. People look at them and they're like, oh, there's this couple that teach together at this high school. Like, everything's so great with them. Everyone loves her husband. He is like the favorite teacher at the school. All the kids kind of have a thing for him, you know, like a little harmless crush. And then like all this, you know, teachers that work there too also are into him. Like, he's kind of like the golden boy, you know. Everyone loves her husband, but she kind of low-key hates him. Like, you can tell they are not really in a happy marriage. Like, it's just gotten very sort of monotonous. You would think I read books or something. It's just gotten where they're very much in a routine. They don't seem to be very in love anymore. Anyways, so that's how the story starts. It's the first day of school. They're going back to school together. She teaches math, he teaches English. School day is starting. So you get her perspective, but then you also get the perspective of this student at the school. She is a junior, and you know that she went through a bit of a scandal at the end of the previous year. I guess there was kind of a rumor going around that she had a relationship with a teacher at the school, and that teacher ended up getting fired. So she's very much an outcast now, but being inside her head, you know, or she, you know, is explaining that that's not what happened. Like, there was no relationship between her and this teacher. It wasn't like that, and she feels bad he got fired, but nobody believes her, yada yada. So now you're going through her day and, you know, her experience, and she's really being bullied very aggressively. And so you kind of watch as both of these stories kind of are playing out from these two different perspectives. This teacher that teaches at the school, struggling in her marriage, and then the student who actually she's a student in both of their classes, both the husband and the wife's classes. So the stories kind of are separate and then start to weave together. And I will say this story does have a teacher-student relationship aspect to it. So if that's like a triggering thing or something that is just too icky that you can't read it, this isn't gonna be for you. It was kind of funny. It brought me back to the like Pretty Little Liars day, Pretty Little Liars days back in the day, whenever we all were Ezra and Arya, oh my gosh, like, just let them be together. Like, what do you mean? They love each other. And now I'm 27 and I'm like, this 35-year-old teacher and this 16-year-old child, I don't know about this. So it is a moment like that. I say this trying not to be weird, but I will say that aspect of it is very kind of entertaining and suspenseful. It's very like forbidden if you're into that. So that's just an interesting aspect of the story, but it plays into a lot of characters that are involved and just making the relationship between all of them very complicated. This gets very suspenseful, and yeah, shit kind of hits the fan at one point, and it just gets wilder and wilder. And then it is one of those classic Frida McFadden books where up until the epilogue, there's information that you don't know, and something will get revealed and your jaw will drop. So yeah, very, very much enjoyed this one. It was interesting. The structure of the story kind of like switches up. I think it was 3 parts. There were like 3 parts to it. And each part got progressively better, progressively crazier, just more suspenseful. And you know, the beginning, it wasn't slow by any means, but I was kind of reading the beginning. But then once I got to part 2, I was like, okay, I'm really, really in this. And by part 3, couldn't put it down. So yeah, it gets crazy. It gets fun. Definitely would recommend checking it out. So the last thriller that I read this month is one that has been on my TBR for a very, very long time. It is kind of like one of the most popular thrillers. I feel like if you are at a store or an airport or just whatever and they have any section of thriller books whatsoever, this one will be there. It is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. You guys know I love a tree. I love a book cover with trees on it, so I've always been drawn to this one. And then once I saw it was on Kindle Unlimited, by the way, all of these thrillers that I've talked about in this video are on Kindle Unlimited, so if you're into that, go check it out. But yeah, I finally decided to read it, and it was so good. I don't even know how to begin to explain this book because it is so complicated. So I'm gonna try my best. Essentially, the entire story kind of centers around this neighborhood, and not even a full neighborhood, but like this street on this neighborhood, and all of the characters live there. So pretty much this woman one day goes missing. She is a wife. She has a very young, practically newborn child. She goes out at night to go for a run, and she disappears, and nobody knows what happens to her. She is missing. And about a week later, another woman who lives down the street, her name is Meredith, her and her 6-year-old daughter also go missing. So now it's like, okay, what is happening? Like, people that live on the same street have gone missing in such a short amount of time. Like, what is the connection here? And everything gets much crazier whenever, about a decade later, the daughter, the 6-year-old daughter, Delilah, is found again. She turns up. People had believed her to be dead all of this time, but she's alive, she is here, and now kind of the wounds of all of this have been torn back open. The case is no longer cold, and so now we're kind of living the events of this whole situation. So the story opens up with sort of 2 prologues. The first one is from the first woman who went missing. Her name is Shelby. So you see the events of her night up until when she went missing. And then you jump to the next sort of prologue where it's from the perspective of Delilah, the young girl. Now, present day, you see that she has been held captive. She has been, I guess, kidnapped, and she's been held in this basement for all these years. And you basically see her escape her captors and get found. And then from there, the story jumps to the past. So you kind of, it's the past, but it's 2 different timelines. Stick with me. The first being the day that Meredith goes missing. So you're getting the perspective of the next door neighbors that live, there's this couple, these 2 women, they're a couple. They live next door to Meredith and her family. So you see Meredith's husband come to their house, say, you know, have y'all seen Meredith? I haven't seen her. It's been like over a day. Her and Delilah are missing. So you're getting the perspective of the neighbors of the events that happened basically once Meredith went missing, and trying to figure out what happened to her, trying to put the clues together. Them and the husband, whatever, kind of are, what's that called? If you're like trying to be an amateur sleuth, like they're kind of trying to figure out what happened to her. So you're getting that perspective in the past, but then you're also jumping back to several weeks earlier, and you're getting Meredith's perspective of all of the events that happened leading up to her and Delilah going missing. So you have those timelines, and then also you now have the present day timeline of Delilah has returned, and you're seeing that through the eyes of Delilah's younger brother, who was just a little kid whenever she went missing. I think he was like maybe 3 years old, 2 years old, so has very little memories of her, but now she is back. And so you're seeing kind of the events of her being back now through this child's eyes. So a lot going on. I know it sounds very confusing, and I was gonna say it is, but it really isn't. Like, it flows really well, and just the way that it's structured, the way you're jumping around, I could not put this book down. I read it in one singular day because I had to know what happened, because there's so many things that this story is focusing on. You know, you have Shelby that went missing, the mom that went on the run and went missing, and then you have Meredith, and you're seeing Meredith's perspective, and then you're seeing the present day, and you're just like, how does this all connect? Like, this story feels like it has absolutely nothing to do with this story, and then there's certain details that are happening that you kind of almost forget because they're not talked about for a while, and then they come back. And I will just say, in the end, everything comes together. Everything makes sense. There is not any part of this story that's really unnecessary. Like, it all works, and I just thought it was so genius. It's one of those books that you finish and it almost inspires you. I'm like, how did someone come up with this? It was just so good. I think you can tell I recommend it. Definitely want to read more by Mary Kubica, because yeah, I see now why it was so popular. It's funny, I made a couple YouTube videos and TikToks and stuff where I would go book shopping and I would show that book and I would say, you know, if you've read it, like, let me know what you think, if I should read it. And I got such mixed reviews. I felt like half the people were like, oh, it's so good, you have to read it, and the other half said they didn't like it. So I don't know, maybe it's kind of a you're into it or you're not sort of thing, but I obviously was very into it. So yeah, a really great month of reading thrillers. I'm honestly really picky when it comes to thrillers. You know, I don't like it to be too obvious. I don't like it to be too slow. I like when there's suspense to it. I enjoy if there's some almost aspects that feel a little bit paranormal. Like, there's things that I like, and then there's things that I don't. And all of these books I loved, like, absolutely loved. It was a very good time. So yeah, and by the way, I filmed a reading vlog of me actually reading all of these thrillers. So you can go watch that. I think it's the last video on my channel. But yeah, let's get into a couple of DNFs now. So, like I said, the couple of books that I tried to read and DNF'd this month were actually 2 of my most highly anticipated reads of the entire year, which made me so sad. The first one was 1,000 Broken Pieces by Tilly Cole. This is the sequel, follow-up, spin-off, whatever you want to call it, to A Thousand Boy Kisses, which if you guys have watched me for a while, you would know this book is very special to me. I would venture to say it's one of my all-time favorites. It is definitely the book that has made me cry my eyes out the most of any book, and I've probably only cried to maybe 5 or 6 books in my life. It just hit me so hard. It's so emotional. It really shatters your heart, puts it back together, shatters it again, but it really is one of those books that just reminds you of what we're all here for, the appreciation of life. It makes you appreciate your relationships, the people you have, and you know, it just makes you want to dream big and all those things. And I loved it so much. But yeah, the sequel came out. Whenever it was announced, I was excited, but also a little bit nervous because I'm always weary of sequels that come out years later because books become really popular. You know, a book that really could stand on its own without having a sequel, when an author decides to write another book because it blows up, because people want more content, and you know that wasn't in the original plan. It's just, I find it can be hit or miss, and sometimes it can feel forced. And unfortunately for me, A Thousand Broken Pieces felt super forced, and it just, I cannot talk about it without completely spoiling A Thousand Boy Kisses. So if you have not read this yet, please go read it, I beg you, and skip forward in this chapter to the next book I'm going to talk about. Do not listen to the spoiler, because so much of this experience is going through this book not knowing what it's about and what the main part of the story is, and then once you find out, it will shatter you, and it's very important. Anyways, have you left now? Okay, so we know A Thousand Boy Kisses follows Poppy. She has this relationship with this boy named Rune. They're from this really small town in Georgia. Rune ends up having to move away in high school, and they're gonna have this long distance relationship, but one day Poppy just cuts Rune off completely, stops talking to him, and he ends up coming back a couple years later, and they reunite, but he's heartbroken. He's a totally different version of himself, and he's like, Poppy, like, why did you stop talking to me? I don't understand. And we learn that Poppy has cancer, and it's terminal, and she's dying. So Poppy dies at the end of the story, and where A Thousand Broken Pieces picks up is it follows Poppy's little sister, Savannah. And we know that since Poppy's death, Savannah has just been shattered. Like, she has not been herself. Like, a piece of her truly died with Poppy. She's just been so depressed. She's completely thrown herself into her academics. She has become like top of her class. She's actually gotten accepted to Harvard, which is great, but outside of school, she has literally no life, no ability to socialize with anyone, and her parents, everyone around her is very concerned. So pretty much her parents end up saying that before you go to college this summer, we've signed you up to go on this trip to Europe with a group of young people that are all going through grief, that have all lost people in their lives. So Poppy's not really excited about it, but she agrees to go for her parents, really for Poppy. She's trying to, you know, become herself again. So you have Poppy, and then you also have this boy named Kale. He is a hockey player, actually, which when I found this out, it made me really excited about the story, because you guys know I am a hockey girl. But he is from Boston, and he actually is going to Harvard as well in the fall, or he's supposed to, because he has a hockey scholarship to play there, which right off the bat, like, that to me was like, you know, they're both going to Harvard and you're from totally opposite sides of the country. And so Kale also is dealing with grief. His brother, trigger warning, committed suicide, and he was a hockey player too. They were both star hockey players. They were supposed to play at Harvard together, and since his brother died, he has like no desire to play hockey. He doesn't want to go to Harvard. He doesn't want to do anything. Like, he is devastated, as to be expected, but his parents are forcing him to go on this trip as well, and he is so angry about it. Doesn't want to go. They practically have to drag him to the airport. But yeah, so that's where Savannah and Kale meet each other. And for me, I only got 33% into this book, 1/3, because for a couple reasons. First of all, immediate insta love between Savannah and Kale, to the point where it was just like, I don't know, I'm 27 now, and I'm just finding that young adult books for me, I just am struggling with. And just the immediate, the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in the entire world walked in, and they just were so instantly like in love with each other that it was just a little difficult for me. There is some like, oh, you know, Kale's very grumpy and is closed off, but it's so insta love that it's almost nauseating. I'm sorry. But also the thing about this book that really I was struggling with is it just felt, look, A Thousand Boy Kisses is so freaking sad. Like, I've said that, but this book felt like it was so sad simply for the sake of being sad. Does that make sense? Like, obviously the whole premise is sad. Both of them are dealing with grief, and I'm sure there's a lot of good messages to it once you get to the end of like how to deal with grief and all of that, but it just felt like trauma porn, like sadness porn. I mean, they're on this trip with these, you know, people, these young adults, and you start going through all the tragic events that all of them have been through and how they so horribly lost these people in their lives, and it's just like one after another where it was just, maybe I was not in the right headspace. It was just so depressing, and I just wasn't enjoying reading it at all. And by the time I got to the 33% mark, when it came to the sort of like romance aspect that is very obviously a part of the story, I just was like, I feel like I could not read the rest of this book and I could tell you exactly what's gonna happen. And the rest of it, outside of the romance, I'm not really enjoying. So yeah, it just wasn't for me, and that made me sad, but I'm just at this point now where I am not gonna continue reading books that I'm not enjoying, especially when I'm on a kick and I'm like reading a thriller every day. If I go to read another book, I read this for like a week straight, and I got to a point where I was reading like one chapter at a time, and I was not wanting to read it. Felt like I was making myself do it, because so many of you guys have asked me for my opinion on this book, and I wanted to be able to give you like a full review, but I just couldn't do it. So yeah, Thousand Broken Pieces was not for me, unfortunately. And then the next book, I am so disappointed to be talking about this right now. I have gotten so many messages, so many comments for you guys asking me when I'm gonna do a review on this book, when I'm gonna finish it. Well, here's my answer. Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas. So many of you guys, so many of my subscribers have found me, subscribed to me through Penelope Douglas. I, you know, read the Devil's Night series a few years ago, obsessed with it. I made a video about every single book. I made videos rereading the series. I made videos, you know, annotating it, vlogs, whatever. I was obsessed with Devil's Night. I was obsessed with Punk 57. I was obsessed with Credence. That is a whole other story. I loved all of Penelope's books, but this one I was so highly looking forward to, because her latest series, the what is it even called? The Hellbent series, I wasn't vibing with. I had to DNF the first book, Falls Boys. I really attempted to read the second book, Pirate Girls. I got way further into that one. Oh, actually, that's a lie. I finished Falls Boys. Oh my God, the way that I can't even remember. I finished Falls Boys, I pushed through it, but I ended up DNFing Pirate Girls because I just not vibing with it, and I was just sad. I felt like I don't know. I'm just wondering if Penelope's not for me anymore. Something feels different. Honestly, ever since Tris 6 Venom came out, after Credence is honestly my favorite Penelope Douglas book. I will say it. I know that's a controversial opinion. People either love it or they hate it. I don't care. I loved Credence. After that, Tris 6 Venom came out, and I feel like Tris 6 Venom was still good. I still liked it. But it felt like from there, everything that's come out since, it just has a different vibe to it. It just is not feeling the same. And I can't quite explain why. And I think it's just these high school stories that literally take place at high school, these young students that are just, it's always like this group versus this group, the other side of the tracks versus this one, and oh, we have all these games we play, and we have all these parties where we're having orgies and stuff. And I don't know, it just feels like I have read the same book 3 books in a row from her, and I'm just not vibing with it, and it's just making me so sad. Like, it's breaking my heart. But I was so excited when she announced she was releasing Five Brothers, because this was going to be kind of like breaking up the Hellbent series, which I've just decided I'm not going to be reading anymore. This book reminded me a lot of Credence, just like from the description of it. It just felt like it was going to have those vibes. It felt like it was old Penelope. It's actually a spinoff of Tris 6 Venom, which I did say that I liked. In that story that follows 2 girls, it's a sapphic romance, and one of the girls has 5 brothers, and they call them the Tris 6, basically. So this book is about the 5 brothers and another girl that was in Tris 6 Venom. So kind of a spinoff, kind of a companion novel, whatever you want to call it. And pretty much it's just her kind of having a relationship with all of these guys. She comes from like the good side of town, like the good side of the tracks, and she has a very wealthy family, but her parents have been going through a divorce the last year, and even though they live in like a mansion, have all these nice cars, they are broke. And her mom is basically forcing her to marry this man who's in his 30s because he's agreed that he will help pay for her divorce fees and will take care of them. But she obviously does not want to marry this man because she is all of 18 years old. Her mother doesn't really care. So she's kind of been escaping and hanging out with the Jaeger brothers. And yeah, she has one of them that she's kind of had a friends with benefits thing going on for a long time. So he's kind of her main connection, but then she's friends with all of them. But then something happens at literally the very beginning of this book. Basically, she's like in the house. She ends up hooking up with one of the brothers, but it's completely dark and she doesn't know which one it is. Which is just like, all right. So that happens at the beginning of the book and she doesn't know which brother it was. So kind of from there, it's like, which one was it? I have to figure it out. And separately, all of the guys are kind of flirting with her. So she's hooking up with several of the guys, which I have no qualms about, by the way. It's not like that I have any issue with that. It's just wasn't doing it for me. I kept reading it because I wanted to know which of the brothers she hooked up with and which one she was gonna end up with. But I kind of felt like I figured out pretty quickly who she was gonna end up with in the end. And I don't know, I can't explain it. It just, again, like the last book, I just got to a certain point where I was like, I'm not enjoying reading this. Like I'm finishing a chapter and I want to put the book away. I want to put it down. I don't want to keep reading. And something about like Penelope Spice used to hit so hard. Like, and I know that it's not just that I've gotten older, because I've gone back and reread Corrupt like last year. I've reread Credence. Her spice used to be so next level, where it would just go on for pages and pages and just be so detailed and so graphic and just like toes are curling. It's just, it was the best spice I had ever read. Penelope Douglas was my goat, and it's just not the same anymore. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that she's now traditionally published. I don't know if the publishers have made her like dial it back a little bit and not be so intense with the spice, because it just isn't, the scenes are just very quick now. It's just, you know, a couple pages, and it's just not giving me that like nitty gritty. It's like I'm reading it and my face, I just have a straight face, and it's not making me feel anything. I'm not turned on, and I'm not feeling attached to any of the characters in the way that, I don't know, her books were so different because they were so spicy and so like crazy and kind of taboo. But I feel like she still made you really care about every character. Like the characters were so deep and so complex, and I could tell that she tried to do that in this book, especially with one of the brothers. I mean, all of them to some extent, but it's not the same. I don't know how else to explain it. I got 33% in, and I read this certain scene that just to me was so crazy, but not even crazy in like the hot sexy way that her crazy scenes used to be. It was just like unrealistic and weird. And anyways, I DNF'd it. I DNF'd it at 33%. Kind of broke my heart, but I just, again, I can't read things I don't want to read. So I don't know, guys. I'm just really sad. I think I need to go back and reread some of her old books because I just don't know if I'm gonna like any of her new stuff anymore. I don't know. She's supposed to be writing a spin-off of Birthday Girl called Motel that I've been dying for years. So when that comes out, I will attempt that, but I'm not reading any more of the Hellbent series, and I'm definitely not finishing this book. So yeah, I'm sorry those of you that were asking me for the review. It is not coming, or that's my review, I guess. I don't know. I'm sorry. But yeah, guys, aside from those books, my entire month of August has been consumed by reading this monster of a book, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I am a good chunk through. God, there's still so much. I feel like I've been reading this book for so long. I've been reading it physically and then also listening to the audio. It is a fat, I mean, it's like over 800 pages, and the writing is small. It's tiny. It is a fat, very long book, but I'm enjoying it. I'm not even gonna attempt to talk about it right now. I will make an entire review video on it for sure. You guys, if you've been watching me this year, you know I'm obsessed with Donna Tartt. I say that. I've read one of her books. She only has 2 books, I think. She might have 1 more, but anyways, she wrote The Secret History, which is my favorite book I've read this year. Maybe one of my favorite books of all time. I honestly think I might reread it in the next month or 2 because I just can't stop thinking about it, and I want to highlight it and read it now, knowing what I know. And so anyways, the second I finished this book, I knew I was going to read The Goldfinch, because this is kind of, I mean, she's very known for The Secret History, but The Goldfinch is her like award-winning Pulitzer Prize book that I feel like I see all of the just like, you know, Emmy on BookTube, people like her, the smart booktubers, the scholars, the educated ones, like they talk about books like this. And I'm like, I want to be like you. So I've had the Goldfinch on my TBR for a long time, but especially after reading Secret History, knew I had to read it. And it's really kind of like a coming of age sort of story. It's very interesting. I don't even quite know how to explain it. I'll be able to explain it better, I think, once I finish it, but been having fun with it, but it's just taken a long time because it's a very long book. So yeah, that will be coming soon, as soon as I finish this. But yeah, guys, that is it. Those are the books that I read in August. If you read any of these books, I would love to hear all your thoughts down below. Please don't yell at me too much for DNFing those 2 books. I really apologize, but yeah, that is it. If you have any other thriller recommendations for me, please, I'm begging, especially if they're on Kindle Unlimited. That actually preferred. Kindle Unlimited thriller recs, please, in the comments. I would love you forever. Okay, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.